Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker for this session. Just a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. And at any time during the event, you can visit those virtual booths from the main agenda page. To ask questions throughout this session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Chris Giles, Vice President, Enterprise Sales and Analytics, at Pitney Bowes. We are so excited to have Chris with us for a thought leadership presentation titled Revolutionary Cost Savings, AI-Powered Shipping Management. Welcome, Chris, and over to you.
Thank you, Vicki. My pleasure to be here. As I say, my name's Chris Giles. I've been with Pitney Bowes for many years now. I spend most of my days talking to customers and really getting in front of some of the challenges around this issue of shipping. Today, I'm going to go through some of the aspects that we see to improve that process and deal with the question is, does AI really have a place to play and where are we focusing as we move forward with our products and solutions? Clearly, shipping is complex. We know that. It's very challenging in this world. Package volumes are increasing rapidly, and getting control of that spend is very difficult. Carrier rates change often. The rates can be unpredictable as to when they change and how they change. We're all dealing with this peak change right now where carriers are adding extra services during the highest volume time of the year. The hybrid work environments, working from home, the back to office mandate, and then people stuck in the middle, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home. How do you get your arms around that? There are many manual processes today. And this visibility to exactly what is happening when may not be limited to where is a single package, but it may be who's doing what and how do I know exactly. As I say, I deal with many customers all around the US, many different situations. The reality is there is data out there, but how do you get your arms around it, how you organize it can be the key to making decisions going forward. Just when you get this clear in your head, the carriers go and change the rules. And this is so true. We have a challenge internally within our company that we try and integrate data from carriers, and carriers change the format of how they deliver the data to us. So even simply integrating that information could be a challenge going forward. At the end of the day, every time you spend money on mailing or shipping, that data should be yours. And you should have access to all of that data all the time. But the reality is, parts of it exist in different places, and unifying it is very, very difficult. When I think about AI in the future and how we bring the data together, the way to get AI to function for us in the shipping space is to unify the data sets and make them standardized and make them accessible. But that's not as easy as it's not as easy to do as it is to say, right? Every single carrier manages their own sets of interfaces, whether you're using FedEx or DHL or UPS or even local carriers. Those regional carriers, data exists in all these places. If you've ever tried to unify an address book across all the carriers, you'll understand how difficult that can be. Getting the data out in a consistent format is a challenge in itself. But the carriers continue to do what they do, but often clients are looking for ways to bring this information together because they need to make better decisions for their business. Getting access to the transactions itself is just not enough either. A question of how you organize, how you drive insights. We find very often in our case, clients need data for reporting purposes, for chargebacks, internal and external, but there's information in that data set that can often be very useful, but getting at it, getting to it is very, very difficult. So getting back to that data set might be easy, but getting access to the right data in the right way can be a challenge. We think there are 4 elements that we need to get our arms around in order to make this better and to get to the point where we can actually deliver true value to the business, optimize shipping spend, identify ways to save, and at the end of the day, prove the savings were real and measurable. We talk about this in these 4 elements of standardizing, centralizing the data set, automating the delivery of mundane tasks such as reporting, and then ultimately optimizing. And how we optimize is really the key. But optimization can't happen until we standardize the data set. In many cases, standardizing an entrance point to shipping software is a very straightforward thing to do. The carriers will tell you all the time, just use our webpage, it's fine, we'll send you the bill. It's very dangerous to use these systems and not make the right choices for your business. Also, independent workforce, they need to understand how to use these services. And with every website being slightly different, that can be a challenge. We believe a single unified interface that connects to carrier services is a much better way to go. The last thing any carrier will tell you is to compare their services to someone else's, but often that's the best thing to do. You have discounts for your carriers, you have contract rates, and very often they're specific to services that you negotiated. And it could be there are other services that are in your portfolio that are not discounted at the same level. Unless you're able to compare these different services across the carriers, it's difficult for your employees to make that right decision. And they need to be presented in a way that's very clear and obvious. We find lots of cases where customers are using overnight services, 8 a.m. delivery for businesses that don't open till 9 o'clock. 10:30 delivery and 3:30 deliveries, 3 p.m. deliveries can actually be much more effective and much more timely in many cases because they still get to the customers when they need to. We talk about smarter decisions. Smarter decisions can only happen when you have the right information to make those decisions. We often go back in data to try and understand exactly who's sending what and when. It's always surprising to me how many customers send out overnight packages on a Friday afternoon. And unless you look at the data, unless you organize it and standardize it, you'll never even expose those opportunities as you go forward. We talk about the data set being consistent, organized, and actionable. In order to do that, you can't have disconnected systems. You need data to be centrally located and available for reporting whenever it's needed. We are testing today AI to be able to integrate questions and answers into the data sets because even our clients are not sure what questions they want to ask. What is the answer to the question is sometimes more important than getting down to raw data. We find that AI can help us to put the question on the table, but there's a process involved to validate that response back. And I'll go into some of that in a moment. Centralizing the information, making a single source of truth, makes a huge difference to a unified view of data. We often talk about rogue shippers. These are the people in your organization that ship from their desktop to a browser through the carrier's website and put those charges back to a credit card. It happens all the time. It's sometimes not even visible, and that expense gets hidden, and it can't always be clear exactly what's happening. The idea of rogue shippers is a huge challenge in a large organization, but collecting the data itself can be fundamentally difficult. Enterprise rules are another area of control that's supremely important. Are people allowed to ship overnight services? Are there individual controls about how they ship? Whenever a shipment takes place, whenever a piece of mail is sent, are you actually capturing the chargeback information the right way? And when you do you have one view of all of that spend to get the right charges to the right people? We often say there's nothing free about a free carrier system. And if they're giving it to you for free, there's a clear reason why they're doing that. The last thing any of the carriers truly want is to be able to share data across platforms so you make informed decisions that may use volume from one side to another. But there's a contrary control to that as well. If you have a view of all of your spend and you have a volume commitment to gain certain discounts, you better make sure you're meeting that volume. So blindly moving to the lowest service in itself could actually result in higher costs for you internally. So again, different thresholds around control, maintaining volume with a single carrier may be a decision you make. Your business rules could quite simply push all of a certain type of package through a certain type of carrier to maintain your volume. Again, control being the key, centralized data being the mechanism to allow you to do that. We often talk about automation in the way of delivering mundane tasks. I've rarely found any customer that rushes into work on a Monday morning to run their postage reports. It doesn't really happen. But the data is available when it's centralized. When it's organized, we have the ability to bring it together in a single view. And ultimately, we can automate it to make sure the right data goes to the right people in the right format to make it useful. You should not be in the business of running reports. I was recently at a client, happened to be Harvard University, and Harvard University was telling us it used to take 6 hours to put their monthly report together. And 6 hours is time not well spent in simply assembling data. bringing information together, reformatting it, changing the details, adding extra data sets that came from disconnected systems. The idea of spending that time was crazy. But bringing that data to a centralized source, controlling how the output is generated, Harvard University went from 6 hours to 6 minutes. And then that frees your staff up to go and do the jobs that are more important and more useful for them in their time. We talk about delivering the data to the people that need it. Often the people generating the reports are not the consumers of the information. I have a client down in North Carolina. They have 700 FedEx accounts, which in itself seems a crazy thing to do. But they do that because each individual entity within their organization pays their own bill for FedEx. But centrally, they want to understand who's spending what on which service so they can negotiate better rates with FedEx as a whole. So understanding what data is needed at the right level, delivering that data to the people that need it is critical. The individuals that actually negotiate the contracts need to understand the type of service that's used, the frequency of the service, and exactly how many pieces are being processed. They don't necessarily care who did it or which location generated it. They need that roll-up information. Again, the right data to the right people in a way they consume it. Ultimately, delivering the data to individuals within an organization should be controlled by those individuals that receive it, and they should not be dependent on someone in the rest of the organization to run some sort of manual process. I have customers, again, multi-location fleets across the US that have been tracking these spends both on mailing systems and shipping software manually, asking individual locations to send in reports and assembling it. Those days are gone. It's no longer necessary. When it comes to optimizing, this is probably the biggest single step forward in making and generating savings. At the end of the day, with the insights about what's being done, where it's being done, which services are being used, you then have choices about making changes. But should you be the expert on how to make those changes, or should a system be promoting opportunities to save? And what we see is within the data itself, if it's complete, will allow you to see opportunities to save with a bit of help. So what we end up doing is finding areas where savings opportunities are significant, where the effort is justified because the reward is significant. We often use individual users' data to find out who are the problem children, who are the ones that continually break the system, who are the ones that continually do things outside the business rules. And by doing that, you can home in on those areas. Just recently, I had a customer call me and said they were concerned about a larger than expected spend for a particular chargeback number internally. And what we found by digging into the data was we could see that an operator of a piece of equipment selected the wrong class of mail. They were supposed to select Priority Mail. They selected Priority Mail Express. Again, having that data does two things. It allows you to understand what happened, and it allows you to train that operator not to make that same mistake twice. And in many ways, it's very much Big Brother, but seeing that information is very important. If you have a mailing system today and you're running packages through those mail machines, then you're actually paying retail rates every time you send a package through those systems. And there are rules within the USPS that says if anything is over 13 ounces, it automatically goes to priority mail because that's how the rate class is structured. If you allow these systems to automatically make these changes, you'll be paying retail rate and you'll be paying priority mail rate for things that could go for ground advantage. But how would you ever know? 2 years ago, there was no such thing as ground advantage. Using software, we can actually promote ideas and ways to save based on those data sets. So the idea of us identifying types of transactions that have inherent savings and then making recommendations even down to single piece level means you can then force a change and you can drive a different behavior with every client. Internal users need to know this data is available because you can't just send out rules and expect people to behave. What you have to do is let them know you have the ability to inspect every single transaction. And so often, that visibility of data is what truly drives a new behavior in an organization. The fact that you can inspect every transaction easily without a lot of heavy lifting means insights that are provided by the system can surface an opportunity. And then once you drive a behavioral change in your users, you can report back on those savings clearly and show your management teams exactly why the investment was worth it. At the end of the day, we use data to drive these decisions so that the users can make better decisions going forward. There's many cases with the USPS, for example, that they will tell you priority mail is delivered in 1 to 3 days. There are cases where the Ground Advantage products are delivered in 2 to 5 days. And their software, when we integrate to USPS, will tell us the delivery time frame. The reality of delivery, though, compared to their prediction of delivery, can be very different. And systems that have access to this data can actually mine the data and determine the actual delivery that occurred for an individual piece and use the actual carrier performance to make recommendations going forward. And by surfacing that information in the shipping workflow, we can help users up front make better decisions about the service they choose. And that's what part of our systems will do. Within Pitney Bowes, we have a platform called Shipping 360. It's a core shipping capability. We're well known for our mailing systems and our shipping software, multi-carrier shipping software. Bringing these two items together is that unification and standardizing that I spoke about. Our postage meters are out there producing millions of pieces of mail and a huge number of packages. And we're very often talking to our clients about those retail rates. And Pitney Bowes mailing machines are not unique. Every postage meter in the US, when it ships priority mail or Ground Advantage, actually ships with a retail rate, the same rate as the counter. To get those discounts, you need to use shipping software. That shipping software has discounts from carriers because they're negotiated rates, and from USPS because you're producing a label that's routable. So they will actually give you a discount to produce a label they can process more efficiently. In our world of Shipping 360, we also have the ability to receive packages inbound and track them from delivery at the dock through to the desktop, and then to enhance that, our locker products. But together, these things provide a unified view of all inbound and outbound transactions. Our analytics platform is the power behind understanding the effect of each of these transactions. And when I mentioned earlier around the difference between priority mail and Ground Advantage, our analytics platform will actually pull that through, share that, and make those recommendations. The reality is today, all of this data exists somewhere, but unless you can unify it with a single view, you will not have the ability to leverage that data. And that's why it's so important to bring this data to one single place. If you're shipping with a carrier service and you're bringing your mailing system together, whatever you do, get them into one place, whether you use Pitney Bowes or not. Get them to a single view, understand who's doing what, so then you can start acting on that data. We built a platform to execute these type of transactions, to bring all this data together, to bring it to a place where you can access the data easily so the people that need it can get it. But in doing so, we also had to build a secure platform, FedRAMP approved, VPAT compatible. The key here is we had to make sure that the platform itself manages the integrity of the data. This is critically important, particularly in the world of packages, because packages have addresses, and addresses are absolutely important to you as a client. Very often we find that our clients will charge back internally, and if you're a law firm and you're using client matter numbers or case numbers, the data that's in those reports is critical to you, and the isolation of data is vitally important as you go forward. The key here is when you make a choice about the data and you think it's always just a letter, the reality is it may be a lot more than a letter. We have situations where clients today ask us to isolate their data sets even within their organization, so only certain people can see certain information. If you're sending out delinquency notices, address is part of that, you may want to restrict who accesses that. So again, protecting that data is not only important, but is critical to your business and may actually be a requirement going forward. When I think about AI, the question with AI, and we struggle with this internally, is where does it fit? How does it play? There's so much noise out there today around AI and what it can do for your systems. And we've spent a lot of time trying to understand how AI can play a different place for us. We know in our platform today, we can generate reports. We can provide the reporting detail that we need. There are business insights that allow us to make recommendations around how you can make better choices for your business simply by choosing a different service and maybe relaxing delivery timeframes. Through machine learning, we actually have the ability to use millions of data sets to show you how carriers are performing so that we can actually make better recommendations estimated by carriers. But the big question still for us even is, where does this artificial intelligence fit? One of the learnings we've found is that whilst all this data is there, our customers struggle to interpret it and extract it. And so we started to look at, where does AI play in that mix? Very often a client will get a system, they have a need today, a problem to solve, which could be as simple as monthly reporting for chargebacks internally, by location, by user, by product, whatever it may be. And getting over that first hurdle is often the criteria for success. But what we're finding is, within the data, there are far more significant opportunities. And when we work through with our engineering team to work with AI and bring it directly into the product, we actually realize that there are some benefits directly from our ability to have one data set, to centralize it, to organize it, that makes AI function better. For us, we now use AI to expose the hidden details, the things we didn't think of. Simply understanding where things are happening, which part of the business is happening, when they're happening, is easy to do if you know which questions to ask. But understanding which location generated the most savings, which generated the least, and where the opportunities may be, are difficult queries to run. And even our customers can't do that. We're now using Gen AI tools to explore that data set. Again, linking directly to a single source of truth, one set of data, to expose things we hadn't even considered were in the data. We also realized that a lot of our calls internally, customers call us to get help from us to build these reports. And they do that because they just can't navigate easily. They don't do it often enough. They're not familiar with all the terminology. And so we're using AI to actually generate the query in free text to allow us to get the reports that we need. And the last point I make here is, I say easy to test and validate. And my engineers hate it when I say that, because they tell me it's not easy. It's actually very difficult. But the reality is, because we have a single source of data, we have one place to point the AI engine to, we have control of that environment, we can actually learn how to use the AI the correct way. What we do internally is, we often, through our testing process in our labs, we actually ask our AI tools questions we know the answers to sanitize the engine. Is it delivering the data we need? And once we've proven that area, we expose those sets of criteria through our integration tool. Today, we have a sandbox that our own sales reps can use to interrogate this data. And what it does is, it allows people that don't understand the data sets to get the information they need with these simple interactions. And so for us, the potential of AI is really beyond the organizing of data and the exposing of information. It's really about driving interaction with our sales teams and our clients to make our products easier to support and more valuable as we go forward. If you can't understand where the savings are, you can't affect the change. But using AI, we can expose that data very easily and simply with the criteria that's important to the customer. Is it user? Is it location? Is it timing? Is it Friday afternoon? That mechanism now becomes very easy with AI. So with that, I think I'll pause and see, Vicky, if they have questions.
So much. What a wonderful presentation. I do see that there are some questions from the audience. The first question that came in is, does transferring data away from carriers create a data security issue?
It depends. So if you're putting it into an environment which is secure, has the appropriate level of single sign-on verification, multi-factor, then obviously there's no concern for that. One of the things that we've found, particularly with this, is carriers keep data for 3 months. And very often you have an obligation to keep data for far longer than 3 months. If you're looking at certified mail pieces, for example, you may have a legal obligation to keep it for 7 years. So often you need to move it into an environment. The key is, it needs to be a secure environment with the right level of protection. Our FedRAMP certified platform is the only one available in the US with FedRAMP certification. So Does it produce a risk? Absolutely. But put it in the right place and you mitigate that risk completely.
So much. Our next question that came in is, how do I make sure employees are choosing the most cost-effective shipping option when using the software?
Two different angles on this. Different customers take two different approaches. One of them is business rules. So they put business rules in place that restrict access to certain services by user, by location, and by carrier. And so one of those things I talked about earlier, that 10:30 delivery in the morning, the 8 a.m. delivery, they're very expensive services, and are they really necessary? You can restrict them. Other customers have decided that employees shouldn't be trusted to make that choice. But they don't want to push all of that volume into the mailroom or into an admin area, because that workload for one individual becomes very arduous. So very often they will implement a process called ship request, where the originator will provide all the details, they provide the package, they create a record, but they don't do that final step. It comes through to a processor that will authorize the transaction. So depending on the control level that you want, you either restrict services by user and location, or you put a gatekeeper in place that can then make the decisions, the final selection. One of the good things about ship request is when you actually make that ship request, you've done your part as an originator of a package. When that piece gets finally sent, you get confirmation of how it was sent, tracking number, when it will get there, and you get delivery confirmation information too. So it closes the loop on the process, but you've got to put a control point somewhere.
Thank you so much. And I see a question that asks, when building an AI agent for large-scale shipping enterprises, what key factors should be considered and what should we avoid?
I think my work over the last few months around this AI is don't assume the AI's got the right answer. That's one of the big challenges we face. How you organize the data and how the AI keys off certain information, you have to test and validate that you have your data construct correct. When it comes to the size of the data, we're not seeing a big issue with the size of the data. We can very easily manage very large databases, but it has to be organized correctly. And as I say, you can't assume that whatever AI engine you're using, we're using Gen AI here, understands exactly what you think. So test cases where you already know the answer to validate the AI is delivering the data you expect from the data set are critical. And we do that very often. As we evolve the AI tool that we're developing, we always go back and have those test cases to say, can we still do what we thought we could do? Have we changed something that caused the AI to respond differently? So you do have to put those checks and balances in place. But data size is not an issue. It just comes down to the ability to process the data in a timely manner. Performance is one thing that we constantly look at. As our data sets get huge, performance is the biggest concern in that space, but we can definitely manipulate the data.
We have time maybe for one more. We have about 2 minutes left, Chris. And the last question that just came in was, how complicated is the onboarding process of an analytics software? Is IT involvement needed?
It depends. The way we approach it is we often sit down with a customer and very often the recipient of the data and ask them what they need. And so if we understand the output, we can actually design the input to be aligned to deliver that data. And a simple example of that is how a large organization is broken by divisions. It's no good having a divisional alignment up front if you don't know what the output needs to be. So we spend a lot of time with the people that receive the data to make sure that we can deliver the right elements in the right time, in the right format. And from there, we then work back down to make sure we construct the input correctly. When we think about our analytics products, they're very regimented in how they're set up. So by turning the process on its head, thinking about the output, we have a much higher success rate at building the solution the right way and meeting the client's needs.
Thank you, Chris, for such an insightful thought leadership today. We are out of time now, but I want to thank everyone else for joining this session today and let you know that this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points to win a prize. And don't forget to visit our sponsors' booths from that main page as well. Our next session will begin at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be a keynote presentation titled Accelerate Your Business Transformation with AI. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to that session, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you. My pleasure.